Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avignoni.
bringing you this week's Ascended World after our nice little 2-week break.
Right.
Yours was nicer than mine because you went to the beach.
Yes, we did.
And of course, this topic had to bubble up for 2 weeks before we could talk about it.
It had to marinate and cook for 2 weeks.
Apparently.
Right.
So we were talking about, in the description, we talk about bottoming, and I'll explain that term that is used. So in some circles, there is a term called bottoming, which means, basically it means that what's considered to be a subordinate position is what's actually the position that has all the control, or it's like hidden in plain sight.
Not what you think it is.
It's not what you think it is. Like, it's everything that we talk about. It's not what you think it is.
Right.
And it's like under the guise of being subordinate, it is still the one in control. Good morning, Gloria. It is still the power and control, right?
Right.
Now we've done that. We've done that in so many ways. And the more this sort of started to come up, the more that it actually became really like in our faces, right? We're like, oh, look, it's there and it's there and it's everywhere.
I know. And it was, and varying degrees. It's not always so roaring, but it just seems to be so, and in fact, I in our long drive, we were talking about the difference between manipulation and simply being that upfront, honest, open, and all the things that come with that. And we talked about how culturally, you know, I hate to be so general, but in the South, this is a way of life.
Oh, totally.
So, you're rude if you just come out and say what you want.
Yes.
You're rude if you're not forceful, but just firm.
Yeah.
And so it's encouraged to be this subversive, manipulative, undermining, all in the name of
passive aggressive,
being polite.
Yes.
Being polite. Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And especially women. Because if you behave in that upfront, forward, and I don't even want to say aggressive, you're labeled, oh, well, you're acting like a man.
Right. But yet it's okay for a man, but it's not okay for a woman. Right. And that's where we talk about, if you want to talk about bottoming at its finest, it's the whole patriarchal society of let's pretend we're giving the men all the power. Right. And, and this is going to piss off a lot of people by us saying this straight out. Right.
Right.
But in a patriarchal society, as we have created it now, we have allowed men to be in a place of supposed power.
Right.
And in the forefront and being the billboards. Right. And yet, the real power comes from the women behind the scenes, right? So, right. And that sounds very antiquated. It sounds very 1945, but we still run that way. That's the thing that I've been looking at so blatantly in the past several weeks. And that's where we call it passive aggressive. We call it whatever, subversive and whatever, but it is truly bottoming because right. And what there are some terms you texted me about yesterday. It's like, or that we get termed being
like a helicopter mom,
right? Being a parent, right?
Right. The nag
or whatever.
Overbearing wife.
And yes, it sounds like it's out of the 1940s. However, it's still played out in such a huge way today, right? And we say, oh no, there's equality, there's Me Too, there's all this kind of stuff. And yet in relationship after relationship after relationship, and this is not just in relationships, by the way, this is in institutional structures. And we're not just talking men and women. This is just a pervasive example across cultures.
I mean, it can be parent-child.
Mm-hmm.
It can be parent-child. It can be siblings. Yeah. It can be, I mean, it's boss and coworker. I mean, it's
politicians and constituents.
Right. It's a dynamic.
Right.
It's an interactive dynamic.
Yes.
So it doesn't necessarily have to be a spousal relationship or a partner relationship. It's just an interaction, actually.
Right.
And it could be with a complete stranger.
Mm-hmm. But there's, in many situations there, like, and we have this whole structure, and it's very subversive. It's very shadowy, right? Very fluid, right? So it's really challenging to put your finger on it. But
and it's totally unconscious for the most part.
Right. Because it's what we're so in the habit of doing.
Right.
And what do we do? Here's one. The elderly with younger generations.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. So here's an example. Because I know people are going to say, well, give us some examples, because, we're sort of talking in broad strokes, and I have plenty, but I'm trying to stay as generic as possible to not get it. I get it. Not be pointed. But here's one, those who, there are some, and I'm not going to say all, there are some, but there are many that after they get past a certain age, right? So here's somebody in a family who, say, is in their late 70s or early 80s, right? What are we taught? Well, the elderly are weak. They're less than.
Need to be taken care of.
They need to be taken care of. And I know so many people who have become a slave to their elderly parent and taking care of their elderly parent, right? Even though their parent is living with them or has lived with them. Well, you had that when your parents were alive, right? At the end. And so it's this under the guise of they are subordinate to you in the way that you're taking care of them financially or having a house for them or whatever, right? And yet then it turns out they're the ones that dictate your entire life. They dictate when you can do something, what you can do, what energy you put to what, know.
And everything from meal planning to, your social life, to the temperature in your house. I mean, it becomes a very, and it comes in dribs and drabs. It's not like one fail swoop. It's like, just that gentle nudging. Mm-hmm. And it plays on that sense of obligation to be that caregiver.
Well, because then we put value on that, right?
Right. And so everyone sacrifices for that.
Yeah. So it's an elderly parent. It's a child, right? We do this for our children.
Right. I mean, I know when I had kids and I wanted them to sleep, it was like I would murder somebody who rang my doorbell.
Yes. Yeah. To accommodate their schedule. I mean, heck, I've done it with my pets, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no, you can't eat over here while they're having their meal. And then I say to myself, what am I saying?
Right. Well, and you see the memes on Facebook, they should outlaw doorbells on television commercials.
Right. Because the dogs.
The dog just goes off.
Oh, I have. So there's all these things that I have been ever since you and I started talking about this 2 weeks ago, I've been so conscious of when I am about to give my power away to somebody or something.
Right.
That is acting as if it's a submissive, subversive, subordinate kind of thing. Right.
Right.
We have something like that going on in my house right now because my adult kids who live home, it's like they are dictating a bunch of stuff. And I realized, wait a second.
Whose house is this?
Whose house is this? And who
Right.
is letting you live here under the grace of love?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Well, and I mean, I just finished a week's vacation with family. I mean, it was everywhere. And I finally said to my adult children that were on the vacation, I said, Sarah is on vacation. Mom didn't come.
Oh, good. That's a great one.
And I just said, figure it out, figure it out. And, at first they were like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Of course.
that feigned ignorance.
Right.
But then I saw others in the family, everybody, it's the posturing and the dynamic of, oh, well, I'm used to playing this role, so I'll get my way through that role by doing X, Y, and Z.
Yes. And there's a lot of manipulation with that, so here's the thing. We don't want to look at that because manipulation we think is bad, what makes a person bad, right?
Right.
We do it so automatically that we're not even, when I started looking at this, right, when you and I first had that conversation, and I was like, I do that. I've been doing that all my whole life. And then you're like, oh my God, me too. And we're just like sitting there going like,
I mean, I'm the youngest of 4 children. You bet I manipulated.
Yeah.
And I learned from all of them.
Yeah. I was the youngest. Yeah. So, and we don't even realize we do it because and being the youngest, there's that subordinate position, right? So it's like, well, then how do I get what I want? Right. Is through manipulation of, oh, I'm too weak. I'm too not smart enough, like not strong enough, or like we do that all the time. We like play on weaknesses as a manipulation point. And so this is not with judgment. This is with total observance, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And we have done, so what the other thing that hit me is because, as I've told you, there's like an interest community my husband and I belong to, whatever. And so I really stirred up the pot because I sort of called out some people on it in a nice, and it just not even like wasn't really calling them out purposely. It was just, we got into this discussion about sacrifice because somebody was totally romanticizing sacrifice, right? Well, how do we cover up that manipulation? How do we cover up that bottoming, right? Is we then become a martyr and say, oh, well, look at how much I'm sacrificing so that you can have your way, so that you can have this, so that you can have that. And I'm all about supporting you because, whatever blank tells me I'm a good person by doing that, by sacrificing myself. Right. And so, there was somebody who was talking about that, who had put themselves in that position, who had forced it in their marriage and to be in like an unequal kind of, because they wanted to, and then kept on telling their spouse how they had sacrificed themselves, or they're sacrificing themselves to do this and to be in this position. And I'm like, and I said, no, you're not. And it was almost like the whole community went silent. And I said,
what?
I said, you're not sacrificing. You are creating what you wanted. This is your happiness. You wanted to be in this position. You wanted to do this. And so you're just aligning everything in your life.
And so what's the sacrifice there?
Right. So that's accommodating it. That's not a sacrifice.
Right.
You're just accommodating it and letting go of the stuff that doesn't serve it. There's no sacrifice in there. And there's this silence. And then there's this vehement defense of the word sacrifice and what that means and how important sacrifice is, and how basically the implication is, how dare I question, and say that sacrifice isn't important. And I'm like, yeah, no, not in my reality. It isn't.
Oh, no kidding. No kidding.
Not in the least.
Yeah.
And because we romanticize sacrifice so much, but that whole claim of sacrifice from a subordinate position always makes it presented as martyrdom. It makes them more powerful, right? Because then you manipulate people through sympathy, through, people looking up to you because we value it culturally and in religious beliefs and belief systems and whatever, that, those who have sacrificed the most are the most valuable, right? So then that gives them the most power.
Mm-hmm.
When we view it that way. But when I turned it around and I said, that's not sacrifice. Like, right. Really, you just created. And I said, what's awesome is you created exactly what you wanted because you decided that was your happiness, and that's great. And now you're aligning.
Where's the sacrifice in that?
There's no sacrifice in that.
Right.
But because they chose that subordinate position, good morning, Michael. They chose to be in that place, right?
Right.
And they didn't want. And there's something about it's like pretending you're giving away your power, but you're really not. That's the bottoming part.
Right. And that is such a, what's the word? It's almost like it's such a paradox that it hides in that.
Yeah.
And like when we were discussing this, talking about how, as women, when you look at the Bible and how we're being punished for eating from the fruit of the tree of knowledge, all while we maintain the sole power of creation. I mean, to me, when I started seeing it that way, it's like, where's the sacrifice in that? Look at the power of creation that women have consistently held.
Consistently.
I don't care whose history you're reading.
That's right. Yeah. In physicality, that it is what it is, right? So, and it's not always been that way. Like we've not always had patriarchal society. We've had matriarchal societies. We still do have some in this planet. There's just different structures of, beliefs. So it's like saying, if you look in the animal kingdom where you don't have that real egoic
right
thing, like you have some, but there's not as much. It's a much different presentation, right? So if you think about lions, right, you have one male to a pack, right? And the male actually, what does he do? Physically protects the pack, but yet the females they run everything else. They run the show, they hunt, they do
take care of the young.
Yeah. Yep. And so some say, oh, well, look at how easy he has it, right? He just gets to sit around and protect the herd. But then it's like, or is he a slave to the herd?
Right.
The pride.
The pride. Absolutely. Absolutely. I know my mother used to have a coffee cup that says behind every successful man is a woman who has nothing to wear. And it's like, she just has to sit back and decide what she's going to wear from any of the functions.
So Gloria says, but for some that may have been learned behavior that now they have to consciously unlearn. Yeah, right. No, that's exactly, not for some, for pretty much most, right?
Right. And that's the way, and whether it's taught, it's definitely observed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the learning takes place in the whole, family dynamic and looking, television. And television is a great source for this because it exaggerates it to the point to where even the unconscious can see it and go, oh, that's ridiculous.
Right.
But that's exactly what's going on.
Exactly.
Right.
And this is the whole point, is it is so unconscious for us. It is so so entrained. We have done it for so long here in this set of dimensions, in this part of consciousness. And that's part of the set of lessons, right?
Right.
Is, like talking about power, who has the power? Like, we can all take our own power. And here's the funny thing is, that saying on, we're not afraid of how powerless we are. We're afraid of how powerful we are. Right.
Right. Exactly.
It's almost like we believe to have power, we need to be subversive about it. Right. Like, because at some point we judged power as bad. Right.
Right.
And
or we
so
don't want to be found out and held responsible
for the power. That's right.
Exactly. Held responsible for that.
And so there's the manipulation, right? So when we peel that back, right? And we go, nope. You're the one creating.
I know.
This is your choice, right?
Exactly.
And so that's why I have been looking at in the past 2 weeks. It's like, well, that's why so many resist this kind of work that we do, because we peel back all that stuff to say, yeah. And and the thing is, we can do it without as much, we can do it completely without judgment. And like I'm saying, like even my statement about the whole sacrifice thing was very positive and supportive and non-judgmental. It was taken so offensively by a number of people.
Exactly.
And so it doesn't matter how neutral you are, because here's the thing, they judge it, right? That's the thing.
Within themselves. Absolutely.
Because if we call ourselves, first of all, when we call ourselves out, and I've been doing a lot of self-observation in this since we started talking about it. It's like,
right.
When you call yourself out on it, you feel really icky.
Yeah. And then you want to judge yourself, and then you want to go through that whole beat yourself up and that whole negative self-talk, which then just cycles you back around to figuring out where that puts you in terms of your power that you innately know you have.
Right. And pretend you don't. And actually gladly pretend you don't. Gladly put all this victimhood, like we love the victimhood. That's why we love it, because it puts a nice little veil over us to say, don't have to take responsibility for that power of creation that I put in there.
Exactly. Yep.
So there's something that's swirling around in all of this. And like we've talked about, it's like, this is not the big picture of it. This is actually the semantics around that picture, but we just haven't, we're still like sort of pushing on that.
Right. I mean, even, even we briefly mentioned this whole abortion thing and how it is forcing women in that role of creator.
It's like, no,
even if it's at the cost of their lives. Mm-hmm. And so there's got to be some hook into all of this about that.
There's got to be.
And, I think that's yet to unravel for us.
Yes, because this one's bigger than the bread box. Obviously, this is why it came up over the 2-week period.
Right. And if you get in that place of self-observation about where you manipulate and what's the undercurrent driving that manipulation, or you don't even want to say manipulation, even if it's just holding your agenda, and the way that you allow your power to be exerted.
Well, and just be authentic, right? In that.
Right. And feel worthy of your agenda and worthy of expression of that power in a way that aligns you with who you are. And it's that, it all comes back to authenticity.
It does. And that's why we avoid it. Like, we've been looking at, why do we still avoid our authenticity? Well, there's a big piece of it right there. It's because we still, we don't really want to claim that power here.
Right.
And so, like, even talking about it, I feel like there's a little rock, and it's not as big as the boulder that used to be there, but there's a little rock going.
There's still something there, almost to the point where it prevents us from easily talking about this and conveying it.
Yeah, because it is a challenging. I mean, I can be specific, but I'm choosing not to be, because just to preserve some situations that are not to talk about. But
there's so many. I saw so many examples, and I'm trying to come up with some, and trying not to be petty about it and nitpick behavior. But it's a way of getting your way by manipulating other people, whether it's through
that's what it
frailty, whether it's through ignorance, whether it's through helplessness. I mean, it's trying to think of examples.
Well, and this would actually, it's funny, that just hit me. This would be exactly why you and I had a period not too long ago. Oh, look, this guy. Over the past month or so, where we had some things that showed up that it would just trigger both of us about others manipulating others, right?
Right.
Through victimhood, through helplessness, through the perception of helplessness, or
right.
Yeah. And so now I'm like, I just connected that going, oh wait, that came first before we saw this.
Right.
And so that's and that's my irritation so that's been my challenge of, when I see people in session, right? When they come in and they want to talk about changing stuff, right? And there's a very stark difference between those who truly want to change and those who want to pretend they want to change, right?
Right.
And there's no judgment on that, but there's a stark difference, because no matter what we do, no matter what I suggest, there's always something that comes up that prevents them from doing that or trying that or doing those exercises on them, for themselves and all that kind of stuff, or some kind of victimhood around it of, oh, I just can't do that, or I don't have time for that, or like they just don't want to do it because that would be taking their power, right? And then you have the others who are like, yeah, I'm ready to shed this and I'm ready to really do it. And it's a challenge because you can't see it right up front. Like it looks the same.
Right. And in thinking about all this just now, in looking at the responsive, whether it's, male, female, and it's the male's response to the female's manipulation or whatever, or whether it's just a, friendship, parent, child, whatever, the response is equally as important as the manipulation, because it all feeds each other. And it becomes a conditioned response after a certain amount of time to where, oh, you do this, then I do this, so then you do this, and I do this.
Yep.
And so it's not just one-sided.
Never. And never, nothing ever is, right?
Right.
We're in duality. There is nothing that's one-sided in duality.
Right.
But yeah, and you see this a lot in families. Like, and I'm not just talking about your nuclear family. I'm talking about interaction when you're adults, as with your elderly parents, with, the elders in the family, with siblings and whatever. And it is, you're right. It's interesting to change your pattern, right? To say, yeah, no, not doing this anymore. Because then everybody around you who is used to being in that pattern, and, everybody jokes about it. Everybody's got it in their families, right? You have the families that say, oh no, it's okay.
Right.
I will just suffer. It's all right. Right. And people call it, mom guilt. They call it, some kind of ethnicity guilt. They call all kinds of stuff. Or it's, here was one, my grandmother, who I loved dearly, and she's passed away in 2009. She was a card, because she would say, oh, blah, blah, and she would talk about something like, oh, it's such a problem, blah, blah. And if you'd offer to do something, oh, no. Right. But she would never ask you, will you help me with this? She would never just say, I would appreciate some help in this. She would talk about it. And if you offered, oh, no, you literally just had to like almost push your way to doing it. But then if you didn't, well, then she would get angry with you.
Yep.
For not helping her. Right.
That's
manipulation right there.
It is.
And so, it's funny because I've had to bring my mother of that over the years, because she was trying to fashion herself after my grandmother. And I'm just like, if you don't ask me, I'm not going to do it.
It will get you nowhere.
Right. So talk about me all you want, complain to your friends all you want. But if you don't open your mouth and say, can you help me with this? Period. Just straight out.
Right. Right.
And if,
And in
yeah.
taking that, that's where my self-examination has come in, because I've sat there and I've said to myself, when I start to complain about something or gripe about something or express discontent about something, I stop myself and I say, am I bitching about this because I want someone to fix it for me?
Yeah. Right.
Or is this truly just an expression of frustration?
Yes.
And that I have no expectations attached to it.
Yes.
And a lot of times I'll get halfway through a sentence and just stop, because I'll realize that that there's that hidden agenda with what I'm saying. And I know my husband every now and then goes, I know, never mind. Because he'll say, what were you? And I'll go, nope, just never mind.
Right. No, I do the same thing. Like I'll stop in the middle of a thought and be like, oh, look at me being so sneaky. I caught you.
Right. Right. And I've become, in contrast to that, I've become much more open in my request for help. I need help with X, Y, and Z whenever you get a chance. Mm-hmm. And here's my deadline, or I mean, the communication flows so much better.
Right. And it's so much easier, right? It's so much less energy, really.
And there's no hidden expectations. There's no disappointment. There's no, and the honesty it encourages that in return, which I think is huge.
Yes.
I think that is huge, because then it can be, they're taken off the defensive, and it's very much more, oh, I can help you with that, but here's my time frame. Does that work for you? Otherwise, we'll have to figure out something together. And it becomes more of a problem solving thing at that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Versus, I'm going to manipulate you. I'm going to get angry that I'm trying to be manipulated. So I'm not going to help you at all. So then you can be disappointment and hold that resentment towards me.
Yeah.
Look at that.
It's just so much. I know. And that's not just with things we want people to do for us, like in stuff around us. I mean, it talks about what we want out of a relationship, what we would like. Let's just say what we would like instead of want, because want is, in want. But, if you just say, what would make you happy? We don't say these things, right? And so this is where I find so many layers, and I've been so conscious about this. Has been a huge transformative thing for me this year, right? And it is under this too, as you're saying that, I'm like, oh yeah, because I'm just thinking, we've had this huge shift. And this is coming from two people, you and I, who are very conscious about every word that comes out of our mouth. This is how buried this is in our culture and whatever, right? Because I am continuously discovering this about myself. And I've been looking at this all year. My husband and I had you and your husband too, we've had huge transformations in the way we communicate and are connected. And I find myself having these huge conversations in terms of unraveling stuff before I ever get to the words, because I'm going, okay, what is my true motivation here?
Yes.
And what am I really trying to say? Right. Yes. And that has taken constant practice, constant observance of myself. Right. And my husband's been really good too, where I've noticed this shift lately, where if I have a moment where I'm upset about something, right, and he's asking, usually because we walk twice a day, so that's usually where we have our talks about stuff, right, and he'll be like, so what's bothering you? Or I can tell something's bothering you, or this seemed like a little edgy or something, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of times, like you're saying with yours, is like, oh, well, I know,
right.
It's fine. And I'm like, yeah, I'm looking for the thread. I'm looking through the thread. Right. Because I don't want to waste any energy anymore with this bullshit, which is really what it is.
Exactly,
my friend.
Well, and it's such a distraction, and it's a
waste of energy to me.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so it's like, I get to this place of, okay, so why am I upset? Like, because he didn't do something. Well, why didn't he, like, why am I upset about him not doing something? So am I going to be upset because this will make him do it? Like that's the manipulation, right? Or is it another feeling underneath, which is usually the case, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of
Right.
something to shift within myself, because it's all about us, right? To say, okay, then it just comes down to, well, I feel this in this situation. How do we remedy, how can we remedy this together? Which is a much freer conversation.
It is. Right.
Because you've now let go of like 20 flipping layers of
I know.
stuff.
Exactly.
And we don't realize we do this. We do this with our spouses, with our friends, with our kids, with our parents. We do this with our coworkers, our bosses, the people like there's all these motivations. And if we got to this place where we allowed ourselves our power, where we said, it's okay to be powerful, right?
Right. Right. And not only is it okay to be powerful, it's okay for you to be powerful too.
Right. And it's okay for us to still appreciate accommodation in our power. Right.
Yes. Yes.
I appreciate you helping me because yes, I could do it by myself. I would really love the help because I have 5 other things that I'm doing right now.
Right. Exactly. Or I've chosen to give you, 6 inches more of height than I have.
Right.
So let me take advantage of that.
Right. And so here, take this, or, take this. If we want to give away our power, then let's just give it away without like pretending and say,
right. Exactly.
Here,
right.
You take this. I will gladly hand this over to you. And I will do like this gives me like time and energy to focus on this.
Right. I remember talking with someone about like an ex relationship. And it's like, well, I could always ask them for whatever it is, but the cost is so high. And it's like, because everything has a string attached. And that's what we're getting rid of is the strings that are attached, where it truly just is that giving or sharing or
taking,
or just stepping back,
or taking and allowing yourself to just
right,
appreciate your creation, to take ownership.
right.
Like we don't want to take ownership for our creation. Like that's the whole, like I look at this, like, so we're having a little family meeting tonight to discuss these issues with our adult children. But,
Right.
I've been part of creating them because I've allowed it.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so now I'm not willing to do that anymore. So it is what it is. But, and you can do that in a way of, appreciating everybody's role, right? Appreciating, even if they say no, right, of their own creation, like in any situation with
right.
With those you're interacting with. Be choosing to be in a situation together, choosing to not be in a situation together, choosing to work on something together, choosing to not work on something together. It's just all of these things. It's not like, and we can take this to institutional, we can take this to politics, we can take this to, governments, and how our entire, in the United States, I'm going to just say it. I mean, well, in many countries right now.
Right.
It is so many layers of manipulation.
And it's hard to know when you've finally gotten to the bottom of it.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine if every time you sat down and watched television and each commercial came on and before it even started, it said, I'm here to convince you to give me your money.
Well, that's pretty much what it is, right?
Because that's all it is.
That's all
They're
it is.
not there to help you. They're not there to be your friend. They literally are only there to take your money. Wouldn't you have a different opinion looking at that commercial? I mean, and that's really all we're asking.
Well,
And
I would give it complete, like, honestly, I might give it more respect if somebody just said it straight out.
Right. And I find that in honoring people's, like, for instance, and I'll go ahead and get specific here. Like if I see my husband's doing something and I think, oh, maybe this would be a better way to do it. And I say, can I help you? And he says, no, I've got it. I have to honor that. I have to honor that and step back and say, okay, I will support you in this endeavor because you said you have it. So I trust that you'll do what you think needs to be done. And I won't nitpick, and I won't come from the side, and I won't offer my 2 cents, and I won't do all these different things to manipulate you to get it to be the way I want it to be. So then I'll feel good about
it. Right. Which is back to the all paths lead up to the same, top of the mountain kind of thing. Right.
Exactly. And next time he might not say, no, I've got this, because he might have been thinking, oh, well, she'll jump in when she sees I'm struggling here.
Right.
And it's like, so next time he might not be so quick to say, no, I've got it.
Right.
Because I take him at his word.
Yeah. Yeah. And we play, and it's interesting when you look at things from this perspective and you watch your own interactions with others, as well as just interactions between others. And you realize how much energy we put to all of that charade.
Right.
And I also realized, because after I had that conversation in that community where I was talking about, no, that's not sacrifice. It's aligning with what you're creating and your happiness, which is great. Why would you not want to take that responsibility? I realized this has been the challenge with what we do, is because we peel back all these layers of the facade and get to the truth of it. And the ego is just not ready in many cases to say, yep, I own this. Right. Like many people, many people will say, okay, I own whatever, this job situation, whatever. Right. But they don't want to say, I own this chronic illness.
Oh, right.
I don't want to, they don't want to say, I own that I was abused as a child. And they don't want to say, I own, like all those kind of things too. Right. And so we've decided that it's, in many cases, it's all or nothing. Right. And of course, when does this come up? Was the month that we launched our self-responsibility class.
Exactly
I just thought, wait, this sounds really familiar.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say is it's taking that self-responsibility to that next level. And by owning your manipulation, it really changes it.
Yeah.
It really changes it, and say, if I truly want this to be the outcome, then why am I feeling that I have to subvert my way there? Why can't I just own this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it serves us in some way. Right. So this is how, okay, so let's talk about a couple minutes of translation of how we talk and what it translates to. Right. Which has to do with, saying, oh my God, I just lost that entire thought. What did you just say? That just flew out of my head.
Why can't I just own what it is that responsibility versus subvert my way there?
Right. Because, when we say things like, okay, so, all right. So if we create our realities, which we are the understanding we do, right? And having is evidence of wanting, you have that in your reality. You've had that in your reality, no matter how horrific the ego wants to judge it. What did it do to help you? right?
Right.
And many don't
Yeah.
want to look at that. What do you mean? What did it do to help me? That was horrible. And, and then they've put, and we have, I don't want to say they, because we all have done it. We have put
Right.
so much energy to creating a persona and identity around the pain that we've garnered from that. So if we were really honest, we would say, well, because honestly, I have gained so much through claiming my pain from that victimhood. I've gained
Right.
a lot of access to things I would have had otherwise. Like then we judge because we so would deeply judge ourselves by saying that.
Yep.
Right. And see, like even saying it out loud feels icky.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I feel a collective groan, and it's like calling us, we're calling ourselves out, right? It was like me calling out the whole word sacrifice, going, yeah, don't even, it's not. You can twist anything. Take it from the person who's a marketing professional for how many years. It's all psychology and how you twist the word, right?
Well, and not to get back to the courses that we have out there, but next month is the shadow, and all of this just reeks of the shadow of that part of you that but I like to manipulate.
I like to be a victim because
Right.
I like the power it gives me as a victim.
Right. And I like for people to think that I sacrifice. And I like to believe that I sacrifice because then it makes me feel better about myself.
And my choices.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
This is not some small
this topic. Is such a huge topic. Yeah. Because I'm like, oh God, it's already where it's time for us to do our clearing.
Right. Yes, it is. It definitely
we can talk about this for a long time. So where do we start on this one? Because this is so huge.
Well, and I always like to start with just being in observation of your behavior and start seeing it for what it really is.
Seeing the truth of our motivations around our victimhood, what we claim as our victimhood, right? So here's the thing. We talk about claiming power. Before we even claim our power, we have to claim our victimhood, like claim it.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So
yes. And claim it from a perspective of, I created that. And I choose to keep it. I choose to keep it.
Yeah. I have chosen to keep it until now.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. See, that feels powerful though. Like it feels uncomfortable and yet powerful at the same time. Like, oh, well, then I'm not hiding from myself anymore.
Right. Yep.
Oh, yeah. Because I'm just thinking about the conversations, although it happened last week, and I just wanted to puke from all of them because I'm like, I felt like there was such a big, of course, the collective reflection back to me, right? Which, of course, is me reflecting back to me going, oh, so where am I still not wanting to claim my victimhood?
I know. And I spent a lot of time this past week looking at that too, saying to myself, okay, if this behavior is really bothering me, where am I blind to it within myself?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. Right. Because the worse you feel about it, the more triggered you are about it, the more it's like, oh, it's a huge piece in there for me.
Right. Where's that glass shard I'm not seeing?
That's right. So step one, observance in non-judgment, right? Observance and acceptance.
Yes.
Of where we are utilizing our power within victimhood. I think that's a good place to start.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
And to be able to see it clearly so that we can change it within ourselves or choose to not, but to do so consciously.
Right. Which will shift it.
Yes, absolutely. All right. All that. Nice little bow. So as always, let's close our eyes, take a deep breath, open our hearts, set ourselves at the vibration where that is our truth. That is from where we exist, create, and experience. All right. Well, there's a lot of resistance there.
Oh, wow, like I really got lost.
Yeah, I need to go sit in that, I think, because I heard so many things and I'm just like, shh.
Right.
There was a lot of chattering. A lot of resistance. Felt good though. Felt good, but it felt like it was the beginning of a journey.
Yes. Like. Yes.
Like, okay, I'm going to open this door and now let's keep going. Interesting. All right. Is there anything that you saw out there?
One of the things that struck me from the very beginning was that gosh, how do I put this really succinctly? As humans, we see ourselves as submissive, but yet that's the place where we've created all of this.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's pretty big.
Yeah. I kind of just sat with that for a while and was like, pretty much, yeah.
Wow. That's a big one. Oh. All right. Well, I'm sure there's going to be a lot more to talk about with this.
Right. No doubt.
Thank you for joining us, everybody. Come back and do this clearing maybe again or again and again and again and again. Right. Take the self-responsibility course as part of our Wonderland Adventures in Wonderland program. And we have coming very excited that we're launching Shadow in October, because this is going to be some uber powerful course. I mean, they're all uber powerful. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
I mean, I'm sorry to say that because I'm like, okay, well, we need new words that are superlative, because I think you and I have been looking forward to the Shadow course since we started launching this back in the spring.
Yes, I think so.
So, but anyway, it's all related and it's also important. Nothing of this, any of this is small. It's the feeling behind, like we've been talking about over the last several things. It's more the feeling than the things, right?
Right.
So it's all of this I have found is getting to the place of, instead of looking at the things, looking at the feeling underneath them, right?
Yes.
Because that's really where the truth lies for us,
right?
And authenticity. So. All right, on that, I'll let you go. We'll let you go. We'll see you next week. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Evignoni
signing off on this week's Ascended World. Have a good one.